Fieldsy, I know this isn't the result that your team would want at the end, but I mean, you get a chance now. You look at the last couple of years where this Nighthawks squad was sneaking into the playoffs. How much more, I don't know, comforting was it to know that you were going to be here?
Yeah, I think, your goal in the beginning of the season first is to, get to the playoffs and, be getting better every week. We felt like we were off to a slow start. So, just to see that we put ourselves in a position where, this last game, obviously mattered for a home game, but for a playoff spot, we already had that secured. It felt good to get that done because that's obviously our first goal, and we got that done, a couple weeks ago. So, it's a tough loss today, but I think on to the next one, right? This is you want to win them all. You want to be going into the playoffs clicking. We felt like we came out slow after that bye week, but I think we started to get back into our rhythm in the second half.
You had another incredible season personally. I know you downplay a lot of these accolades, but it's got to be pretty awesome to have some of the recognition that you've been able to receive.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thankful for you guys, a lot of the time in that. It's a team effort out there, and, all the credit goes to them, my teammates, my coaches, because those are the guys who, might not get the recognition, but they're doing all the little work, right, that to me, doesn't go unnoticed. And the coaches are putting out a great game plan to make us successful and to put each of us individuals in positions where we could thrive in. But yeah, I think you guys, because, you guys are the ones who put it out there. And, I think at the end of the day, you train in the off season, you work hard during the season to be the best because you want to be the best. So, I thank you guys because I think sometimes there is a lot of media that's very biased towards, certain players. But, I really appreciate you guys, always putting things out on us in general because I feel like our team's kind of looked down on a little bit. That gives us a chip on our shoulder.
You and Smitty are often the goal scorers. How big of a piece is Ryan Lanchberry to this puzzle?
Yeah, he's huge. I mean, I think, he's had an incredible season. He took a big step forward. I think we have a lot of guys in offense who are threats. And, I think what differentiates us from, some other teams is, we spread the ball out. It's not like a ping pong ball between, two guys. Everyone's touching it in a possession. Everyone's getting involved. And I think, that gets us all going. And that was a huge part of our run. So we love playing together, right? We are having fun out there. And, we celebrate each other more than, we celebrate ourselves a lot of the time, which, I think for a successful team and successful offense, you need that. So, we're lucky to have him. We're lucky to have, all the pieces on our team. I think, we're all gelling and we all love being together. So we want to keep it going.
You look at the way that first half goes, it felt like you guys were swinging the ball, maybe even faster than you have at any other point this season. But then in the second half, it's that physicality and intensity. Just what was it you have to make that decision to move off of, yes, the ball is moving fast, but our team's offense isn't technically going as fast as we want it to be rolling right now. Just what was that kind of progression to the second half?
Yeah, we knew, they're a great team, a great defense, great goaltending. We knew coming into the game that they're a tough team to go against, and, we just knew we wanted to come out, flying. I think that doing that, sometimes you try to get everyone involved, too much, and you don't want to be the one to, take the shot. You want to keep moving it, right, and getting everyone involved. And, I think for us, we just wanted to come out in the second half and be physical, set the tone, because I feel like, in the first half we weren't, kind of like what you're saying. We were kind of playing perimeter. So, just to get through the middle was a big, thing we harped on at halftime. Getting back to our fundamentals that made us successful this past six, 7 game run. So, that was a huge focus coming out. Happy you noticed it because, we were focusing on it. And I think it helped us be successful.
For you specifically, it felt like that physicality ramped up in the second half, which is maybe not a normal characteristic. Whether it was the actual physicality or you're just jawing to draw that extra contact, you already get enough hits. Did you just realize you had that opportunity and you hit a different gear? Because it felt like you then projected it to the rest of the team there.
Yeah, I feel like for me, I feel like I get into a game more with the physicality. It's how I play. I think to be a smaller guy, you're not always looked at like, you're a physical player. But, I think for me to go out there, making some hits, getting in the corners, kind of, getting into the defenseman's faces, not letting them be, comfortable out there. I think that's something, we all thrive on and we all want to do. But for me personally, I just, I try to lead by example. So, I went out there and, just trying to do as best I could, getting in those battles. And, if you're on the bench or if you're on the field and you see one of your teammates doing that, it fires me up, right? If I see them get that tough loose ball or that big hit. So, I wanted to be that guy to be the, kind of the juice for the team.
Yeah. Last question for me. CBD. Just your thoughts on Christian Del Bianco before next week.
Yeah, he's he's a household name. He's a great goalie, right? And he's one of the best there is. We're gonna have to, I think going against a goalie like that, you could get tripped up on in the preparation for it, right? And in trying to do the scout on him, right? We'll have a scout just like we do with every other team, on their defense, on their goaltending. But at the end of the day, we feel what makes us successful and when we are successful is when, we're dictating and we're playing our game, right? And we're dictating to the defense, not letting them be comfortable. So him as a goalie, he's tremendous. He's given them a big boost since he's been in. He makes a lot of really good saves and he makes the ones he should too. But yeah, for us, at least me personally, I know it's him in net. I know their defense, but I just want to play my game. I want us to play our game. So.
Is there a sense going into this game as the more experienced playoff team that's going to give you guys a little bit more of an advantage off that, and also having played them, even though Christian wasn't there the first time, that you've been in that situation, you've been to Vancouver now, and kind of going from there?
We've really learned off, our prior years. We're happy to be there in the past, but, I think, maybe we just weren't ready to make that next step, and I think now we are. We've seen what it takes to, play at that level. We've seen what it takes to win games, and I think for us, we had a lot of learning lessons in the playoffs last year. We came out really slow. I think they scored 4 right off the bat, and, I think after that, I think we ended up, if it was 0-0 at that point, I think we ended up technically winning the rest of the game, but digging yourself a hole like that, it's hard to come back from. So, we have a lot of lessons we learned, and we're going to use, moving forward. I think you look at the best teams who've made runs in the playoffs; they've all had a lot of playoff experience. So we're right there now, and there's no excuses this year. We like you said, we played them earlier in the season. We felt like we didn't put our best foot forward, and I'm sure they felt similar. We obviously didn't come out on top, but it's a tough place to play. We know we're going to have to come out to a strong start.